Legacy of Kain's Soul Reaver on the PlayStation 1 is one of my favourite video games of all time. A sweeping Shakespearean tale of death, rebirth, revenge, betrayal, cosmic machinations, and personal grudges. I've made a video on it before. I still use the opening hour of Soul Reaver 1 gameplay as an example of mechanical brilliance in tutorialization. Overall, it's a densely packed and excellently paced game. Then a few months ago, Crystal Dynamics announced a full remaster of the first two Soul Reaver games, being done by Aspyr, the same team behind the very well-received Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 remaster collection. Now this is a remaster, not a remake, so it's the original games updated to run on modern hardware with optional improved textures which you can toggle on or off while playing, just like Tomb Raider. I really like this for two reasons. The first is a remaster brings old software up to modern standards, as sometimes the most difficult thing about playing old games is actually getting them to work, and short of going to find an original console, emulation only goes so far. The second is the remaster collection contains both Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2, and I've never actually finished Soul Reaver 2. So let's change that. Welcome, I'm Josh Hayes. Let's return to Nosgoth, confront Kain, question the true intentions of the Elder God, Mobius the Time Streamer, Janos, Ordron the Ancient. Let's imbue the Reaver in the elemental forges and see if we can create a paradox great enough to change fate. As I ask the simple question, Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 2, was it actually any good? Important warning, this video contains not only spoilers for the entire game, but also scenes of flickering images and quickly pulsing background effects, along with red and green flashing screens. I'll mention them again before they happen. I'll also be trying to explain the plot of Soul Reaver, so grab a cup of tea and settle in because it gets complicated. As usual, a massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon, YouTube, and Twitch who keep this channel alive, and while this video isn't sponsored by Crystal Dynamics or the Aspyr team, thank you for sending me the game. First off, the remaster as a piece of software is great. Both games, Soul Reaver 1 and 2, plus a load of extras, the scripts, the old video footage of the voice actors recording the original lines, even some restored unused game files, the unused forges, or Turrell's boss room, which was meant to be in Soul Reaver 1 but wasn't. If you're a Legacy of Kain fan, there is a lot to love here. And why wouldn't there be? Because this remaster was directed by Rainer Ordron. Rainer is a Soul Reaver superfan. Rainer has a YouTube channel. The first video uploaded to it 17 years ago shows the Mobius room from Soul Reaver 1, a place you're not meant to be able to get to, and then more videos showing more secrets. Rainer would then go on to create and run the fan page The Ancient's Den, which chronicles all the Legacy of Kain games, the lore, the history, the cheats, the lost content. Rainer is obsessed with Soul Reaver. She then worked on the Tomb Raider remasters, and when they needed a director for the Soul Reaver ones, I think they chose the right person for the job. She even popped into my Twitch stream while I was streaming Soul Reaver 1 and 2 to say hi, which I appreciated. So the software itself is great, and the team behind it are knowledgeable and passionate. Unfortunately, I need to be honest, and for Soul Reaver 2, that's the highest praise it's going to get, because oh boy do I have issues with this game. We start where the first Soul Reaver finished, in the Chronoplast fighting Kain. Kain flees through a time portal, Raziel follows, we meet Mobius the Time Streamer, and okay, let's just back this up because we need some context. Soul Reaver 2 assumes, both narratively and mechanically, that you have literally just finished playing Soul Reaver 1 and later has references to the Blood Omen games, so in order for this video to make sense, we need quite a bit of backstory. The problem is, this series involves time travel and paradoxes, so I'm going to do my best to summarize where we are in the Legacy of Kain franchise right now. Sitting outside of all this, we have the Elder God, big tentacle creature, he'll matter soon. At the start of time, we have two warring races, the Ancients, these blue-winged angel things, and the Hilden, sci-fi-like alien things. The Ancients make a magical sword called the Reaver and give it to Janos Ordron because he's really strong. The Hilden also make a magical superweapon called the Device, built by a Hilden called the Builder, powered by something called the Mass, because the Hilden are just great at naming things. The Device is capable of destroying all life on Nosgoth, but thankfully never actually gets turned on, because it gets destroyed in an alternate timeline that we'll see the creation of later. The Ancients then build 9 magical pillars called the Pillars of Nosgoth. Each pillar represents an aspect of ancient society: mind, conflict, nature, energy, dimension, time, alchemy, death, and balance. Each pillar gets gets assigned an Ancient Guardian, and Janos Audron becomes the 10th Guardian, assigned to guard the Reaver blade. The Ancients then use their super powerful magic and the powers of the pillars to banish the Hilden to another dimension, basically hell. However, as they are banished, the Hilden curse the Ancients with two things: sterility, so they cannot reproduce, and a thirst for blood, essentially turning the Ancients into vampires. The now vampiric Ancients slowly die over time, and humans appear to take over Nosgoth. Janos Audron realizes you can just make humans into vampires, not fully fledged Ancients, but enough to continue the vampire race, and one of his strongest and earliest creations is the vampire Vorador. Humans don't really like this, so they form the Sarafan Priesthood, warriors focused on killing vampires and any remaining Ancients like Janos. They're rather good at this, and eventually all the Pillar Guardians are killed. But the Pillars still need Guardians, so as humans are born, they get randomly chosen by fate. 9 human Pillar Guardians become known as the Circle of 9. Vorador gets a bit angry at this and kills 6 of the 9 human Guardians. The 3 remaining are Malek, the Sarafan leader, Mobius, the Guardian of Time, and Mortanius, the Guardian of Death. The killed human Guardians are replaced by new people over time, but then a demon possesses Mortanius, and through a series of unfortunate events, Ariel, the Guardian of the Pillar of Balance, is killed. This causes two things to happen at the same time. Nupraptor, Ariel's lover, goes mad, and his madness infects the rest of the Circle of 9, corrupting them and the pillars they are guardians of, plunging Nosgoth into chaos. And at the exact moment that Ariel dies, the human baby Kain is born. He is assigned the role of Balance Guardian, but the corruption has immediately started, meaning he is now incapable of ever fulfilling his fated destiny. In a cool touch, you can find Nupraptor's retreat in Soul Reaver 1, or a statue of Nupraptor with his eyes sewn shut so he never has to look upon this evil world again. Mobius the Time Streamer then comes up with a plan to save Nosgoth: kill all the corrupted Pillar Guardians. The young child Kain is hunted down and killed because he is the Guardian of Balance. But then Mortanius, being the Guardian of Death and currently possessed by a demon, offers the now dead Kain a chance to return to life as a vampire and go and get revenge on his killers. Kain agrees, and this launches the events of Legacy of Kain Blood Omen. Kain is given a few cool vampire artifacts to do his revenging, including the Heart of Darkness, the undead heart of Janos Audron, a relic capable of sustaining vampiric unlife. How Janos dies is explained soon. There's time travel involved. Kain sets out to kill the Guardians and does quite well, but then Ariel explains a new threat. An evil human called the Nemesis is waging a bloody crusade across the land, killing all the vampires. So Kain goes to kill the Nemesis. He fails and uses a time chamber to travel 50 years into the past and finds the well-loved King William the Just. Unfortunately, William is the guy who will grow up to become the Nemesis, so Kain kills him now, which in theory should prevent this bloody crusade against the vampires, and then returns to his actual time. Problem is, doing stuff like this causes a paradox, and time in the Legacy of Kain series is quite interesting. When a new timeline has been created because the Nemesis now never actually happened, the actions and events of time are still pretty much the same. Mobius the Time Streamer used the death of William the Just at the hands of Kain to ignite a war against vampires, and the bloody crusade still happens. It's just now led by Mobius instead of William. Kain then kills every other member of the Circle and is finally faced with a choice. He is the last remaining Guardian. To save Nosgoth, he must also die, but he's the last vampire, and doing so would end his race. Kain chooses not to die, raises the bodies of ancient Sarafan priests as his vampiric commanders, and rules over all of a destroyed Nosgoth. This is where the events of Soul Reaver 1 begin. You play as Raziel, killed, reborn, and go hunting for Kain. Soul Reaver 1 covers killing your old brethren, gaining their powers, finally confronting Kain within the Chronoplast, and Kain throwing himself through a time portal again. There is a lot I've glossed over, but the general themes are the Hilden are gone, the Elder God is kind of manipulating things from behind the scenes, Kain is still the Balance Guardian, but is unable to ever fulfill his role and continue the vampire race unless he paradoxically both lives and dies. And creating a paradox in the past will shuffle but not completely change the future. Unless you can create a paradox big enough, then reality has to rewrite itself. But now we've stepped through the portal and arrived at the start of Soul Reaver 2 with the cutscene, and a quick warning, there are around 2 to 2.5 hours of cutscenes in this game. And playing for this review, I actually got the complete the game in under 6 hours achievement, and that does count time in cutscenes. So roughly 30% of this game is cutscene. And after finishing it, that's not actually a bad thing. Mobius explains we're in the Sarafan stronghold. Kain is at the pillars, which are currently not corrupted in this time, and we should go and kill Kain. And then we get the first real instance of Raziel questioning Mobius.
But you must believe me. I mean you no harm.
You can drop the benevolent facade, Mobius. I know who and what you are. I should kill you where you stand.
Perhaps you should, my boy. But you don't.
Are you so certain of that, Mobius?
My role as Time Guardian affords me a certain level of omniscience, Raziel. No, you don't kill me. That honor belongs to your maker, Kain. Some 30 years from now, we'll forget about rekindling our old friendship then. But consider an alliance based on our common ground. We both want Kain dead. I can help you do it.
You don't want to meddle in this, old man. I know all about your sordid little schemes, but you're simply out of your depth on this one.
You underestimate me, Raziel. Let me show you. Even now, Kain is lying in wait for you, unaware that I've snatched you out of the time stream and brought you here to me. See how he lingers at the very pillars he is destined to destroy, foolishly confident that he has eluded your grasp.
The pillars are still standing in this time.
Yes, Raziel. They are the embodiment of the divine force which preserves the life of our world. We who serve the pillars maintain their delicate balance, and Kain is destined to be the fulcrum upon which that balance turns.
This sets up Mobius as an unreliable narrator. Raziel will learn many things from many people, and almost none of it is true. Piecing together the actual history of what has happened is part of what makes experiencing Soul Reaver 2 so much fun. I won't say it's fun to play, but fun to experience, and that will make sense soon. Mobius also has a special anti-vampire orb on the end of his stick, which for some reason deactivates our Soul Reaver blade. Foreshadowing. Game starts, leave the stronghold, go and kill Kain, and at the moment we get control of Raziel, the issues begin. Let's rip this band-aid off right away. The issues I have are the order of design priority between Soul Reaver 1 and 2. Soul Reaver 1 is a personal story which you experience through a video game, with puzzles, combat, and environmental boss fights which not only have narrative connection but also reward a mechanical means to explore the game more. Paced really well. Soul Reaver 2 is a video game with a story, and fewer puzzles, no boss fights, no optional areas, no collectibles, no magic system, and awkward pacing. I'll justify why I feel like this as we get to those moments. One lovely touch with the remasters is you can go into photo mode and fly the camera around to really admire the environments and the new model textures. That is a lovely touch. Run over to this door and get a little interaction icon. They have retroactively added these to Soul Reaver 1 as well. This highlights doors you can open, objects you can pick up, or puzzle bits you can interact with, and the symbol itself is the symbol from Janos Audron's Mountain Retreat, which is a nice touch. Into the corridor and face the first enemy, and the combat is certainly something they've got. Because this is a direct sequel, it's of course going to be compared to Soul Reaver 1, and back in Soul Reaver 1, combat was essentially an active puzzle, because you needed an external thing to kill the enemy, stun them and then throw them into sunlight, or onto a spike, or impale them with a spear, or drown them. Raziel himself was not powerful enough on his own, and combat encounters were few and far between. There were very few mandatory ones. Even the boss fights were about using the environment to beat the boss, not the brute strength of Raziel, meaning it was Raziel's interaction with the world of Nosgoth that led to victory. Soul Reaver 2 has changed that. Combat is now much more frequent. You lock on with the right trigger and then have heavy or light attacks. You can dodge in and out of range, you can duck and perform low kicks, or hold L1 to block. And this sounds great, but there are a few issues. Enemy attack ranges are almost always longer than yours, even with the same weapon. Their attack animations are faster and their blocks can stop all of your attacks, while your blocks can stop some of their attacks. This means while locked on, you are actually at a disadvantage. This means there are two ways you can realistically approach combat. The way you will likely use is just not locking on and running a tight circle around the enemy while constantly light attacking because they cannot block that. This is very effective but also extremely repetitive. But that is the second best way. The best way to approach combat is to not bother with combat at all. There is no benefit to killing enemies, no experience points, no hidden skills. The weapons they drop are never as good as your Soul Reaver, which you've always got. They can't follow you from room to room, ranged attacks can easily be dodged by zigzagging, and the potential health that you'll lose being hit is greater than the health a soul would return to you. So if it's not a mandatory fight, of which there are several, just don't bother. I think it's a real shame that the combat system has clearly had more things added to it, and yet the best way to play the game is to ignore all of those things, meaning it actually ends up worse than the first game. You can find weapons scattered around, swords and spears and axes, and having one held can allow for flourishes like spinning backhand decapitations. But as we'll see soon, you actually get given the best weapon in the game very early on. We reach a gate and get told to switch to Spectral Realm. This is a sequel, it's not an onboarding point for new players, it assumes you already know what the Spectral Realm is and you remember that you got the phase through the gate power from Melchiah because it's never actually mentioned. You switch realms by opening the menu. The menu has 3 choices: switch realm, open the map, and activate the Soul Reaver, which is kind of redundant because you can do that by double tapping B. The map shows your current location in flashing outline and objective as a red dot, but as we'll see, this game isn't really open world. It's essentially a long corridor with 2 offshoots that you run up and down 5 times. With Mobius and his magic anti-vampire orb gone, the Soul Reaver returns. In the first game, it's a more solid beam, almost lightsaber-like. Here it's a thin, short, pointy beam, like a needle. Deeper in the stronghold, we find the tomb of William the Just, the boy king who, in another timeline, became the Nemesis, and on his tomb, the physical blade of the original Reaver. And as we approach, the world begins to pulse and shake. And this pulse effect was one of the most complained about moments when I Twitch streamed my very first playthrough of this game. It is far too extreme. Narratively, the pulse is meant to represent a paradox on the verge of being created, but it lasts for far too long and makes the cutscene, as great as it is, hard to watch.
And so the Reaver met its former self, still imprisoned in this corporeal shell. I watched, mesmerized, as the Wraith blade uncoiled itself and snaked down the length of the physical blade. Embracing its twin, its mirror self, the Reaver's long dormant spirit was now fully aroused. And for the first time, I felt the true presence of this other entity. Willful, ravenous, and deranged from thousands of years of imprisonment. The Reaver was now in command, and I, now merely its helpless host, felt my soul being leached to restore the blade. But the Reaver knew better than to destroy its host, and just as I neared the brink of oblivion, the blade released its hold on me. As I recovered, I realized we were now bound together in a fragile alliance. The Reaver no longer merely my symbiotic weapon, but a sentient parasite competing for control.
What have you done to me, Mobius? Is this your trap?
Raziel, I beg you to stay your hand. This was none of my doing. I have sought only to aid you in your righteous quest.
Why, you're trembling, Mobius. Has your confidence abandoned you? You seem to have made a fatal error by leaving your precious staff behind. Is that where all your courage comes from?
Listen to me, Raziel. You don't know what you're doing.
As you said, death comes for us all.
Yes, the Wheel of Fate demands it.
What did you say?
The Wheel of Fate. The inexorable cycle of death and rebirth to which all men are compelled. We serve the same God, Raziel.
Mobius then mentions the Wheel of Fate, the cycle of death and rebirth the Elder God mentioned back in Soul Reaver 1.
There is no balance. The souls of the dead remain trapped. I cannot spin them in the Wheel of Fate. They cannot complete their destinies.
This means Mobius serves the Elder God. We throw away the Reaver blade, not needing it, and go and hunt down Kain. And now a change from the first game. In 1, you could only summon the Reaver in the physical realm when you were at full strength, and it would then sustain you. But here, you can summon it whenever you like with whatever health you have, but using it will fill a meter, and when the meter fills up, you will begin to lose life. And enemies killed with the blade do not produce a soul you can eat, so it's got a bit of a downside. But even with this, it is still the best combat choice in the game by a country mile. Explore the stronghold some more and find some more lore.
So this was the legendary Janos Audrin, reputed to have been the most ancient and diabolical vampire to have ever existed. According to folklore, he lived high in the cliffs of Nosgoth's northern mountains and preyed mercilessly on the defenseless villagers below. His reign of terror ended when the Sarafan finally hunted him down and tore his throbbing heart from his still-living body. This relic came to be known as the Heart of Darkness, and was supposedly imbued with the power to restore vampiric unlife.
And while the cutscenes are great, I feel like I'm enjoying them more than the gameplay. I'm actually exploring to progress the plot, not to play the game. That word explore, that's one of the major downgrades from Soul Reaver 1. There are no secret areas in Soul Reaver 2, no hidden power-ups, in fact the magic system has been entirely removed. In Soul Reaver 1 you can find the puzzle pieces to enhance your health, accessed by backtracking through the land and using the powers you gain to access new parts of old areas. There are no health power-ups in Soul Reaver 2. 1 had the magic glyph system, hidden altars which gave you special extra powers like the AoE pushback or freeze or light wave, and then eldritch energy, which increased your total magical energy. That's all gone too. 1 had 2 major secret areas, Nup Raptor's Retreat and the Human Citadel, both accessed using boss powers and both completely missable. In 2, you cannot ever miss an area because despite the rather excessive backtracking, the game is ultimately linear, and you have to travel through it in a set order, through everywhere. Even with the navigation advantages provided by the later Air or Fire Reaver, you only ever use those skills to open mandatory doors, not optional areas. Now the first game was linear to a degree. You had to do the bosses in order, but it was the player's choice to then explore old areas with new powers and being rewarded for doing that. That's what made the game feel open. Soul Reaver 2 does not have that. Even the opening of the games shows the difference in quality. 1 had a movement tutorial, jumping, avoiding water, combat, block pushing, then combining these things into a short puzzle in a self-contained room. 2 has combat, which you'll very quickly learn to just not engage with, then later we'll get 1 mention of high jumping and gliding. Block puzzles have been almost completely removed and replaced with moving an object along a preset track. In fact, there is 1 instance of freely moving a block around an area and you must move it 3 tiles. The block flipping mechanic used to navigate ledges, stack them too high, or orient them to finish pipe puzzles such as in the cathedral has been completely removed. And while combat happens in the same location as some of the very simple puzzles, it never seems to quite mix together into a single coherent experience. In my opinion, Soul Reaver 2 has an absolutely excellent story and certain gameplay elements may be more fleshed out like combat, but it's a rather large step backwards in the overall terms of quality of the experience or mechanical construction of a game. And don't forget, we can't just compare this to Soul Reaver 1, we also need to look at the contemporaries of the time. This released for PlayStation 2 in 2001, the same year as Devil May Cry, Final Fantasy X, Metal Gear Solid 2, Max Payne. Of these, Devil May Cry competes the strongest and closest, also featuring a cool sword, brooding protagonist, mandatory combat encounters which lock off areas with energy walls until you complete them, but the combat in Devil May Cry is vastly superior. Releasing in the same year highlights that Soul Reaver 2 is very much carried by the quality of its story and voice acting. If you were to replace the story with something weaker, the gameplay, the mechanics, the pacing, the uninspired platforming and repetitive combat is not enough to carry this game. So we fight through, and by fight through I mean run past some enemies until we leave the Sarafan stronghold and discover the natural beauty of pre-corruption Nosgoth. Jump into the lake and swim along, and for some reason you cannot control the camera while underwater. So we swim through, jump out, and reach our first checkpoint. In 1, if you die in the physical world, you go to the spectral, and if you die there, you get sent back to the Elder God's chamber, reinforcing how powerful the Elder God is to continuously revive you. You also had a little square where he would tell you your current objective, and then you used the warp gates to travel across the land to get back to the closest place. Here, no warp gates, in fact no fast travel at all, and death respawns you at a checkpoint with no real personality. In my 6-hour playthrough I died once just to see what would happen. Soul Reaver 2 is a rather easy game. Along with checkpoints, you've now got save stations. In 1 you could save anywhere but would always reload at the Elder God room. Here, save points. Notice the on-screen prompt teaching you how to high jump. Then we'll glide over this gap, and that's your jumping and gliding recap done. Run down this outside area, essentially a corridor. We have dog enemies now, as annoying as Dark Souls, and there's the mandatory Dark Souls video game essay comparison. We eventually need to hold a switch to open the gate, so flail the Reaver wildly to kill these things, then finally reach the pillars and confront Kain in one of the greatest cutscenes in gaming history.
The pillars of Nosgoth, pristine, whole, and uncorrupted. I had never beheld them in this undefiled state, yet something profound and indelible resonated within me at the sight. And there, waiting at the very heart of the pillars, was the canker that was destined to destroy them.
I know you're there, Raziel.
Mobius led me to you, Kain, though I might have guessed you'd meet me here.
And if Mobius told you I was hidden on the underside of hell, would you throw yourself into oblivion to pursue me?
Spare me your elaborate metaphors, Kain. I have pursued you here for one purpose. You will pay for your betrayal, and balance will thus be restored to Nosgoth.
And whose will is satisfied then? The will of Raziel or Mobius?
Would I be better manipulated by you, Kain?
We've been brought here for a reason. I've seen the beginning and the end of our story, however, and the tale is crude and ill-conceived. We must rewrite the ending of it. You and I.
Face me, Kain. Even you shouldn't die a coward's death.
Isn't it customary to grant the condemned a final request?
I recall no such courtesy from you.
Indulge me, Raziel. All I ask is that you listen. This is the sublime moment of our undoing, Raziel. The ineffable fulcrum upon which swings the entirety of our history. This is where all of Nosgoth is betrayed. In this instant, Ariel, the Balance Guardian, is murdered by dark forces bent on overthrowing the pillars. Her spirit is just now tearing free, lost in the ether, trying to find its way here. You have already seen how she comes to haunt these pillars.
Bound here by your refusal to die. You are the reason this land becomes diseased. As long as you remain alive, you condemn Nosgoth to an eternity of decay.
Be still, Raziel. See this. As Ariel dies, I am being born to take her place as Balance Guardian. Such is my destiny.
My God.
At the moment of my first cry, Ariel's beloved, the Guardian Nupraptor, finds her corpse. Racked with grief and tormented by suspicions of treachery, Nupraptor plunges into a madness which overflows and infects all of the Guardians who are symbiotically bound, including me. The repercussions of Ariel's assassination were expertly calculated. The entire circle descends into madness, and I am tainted at the moment of my birth, instantly rendered incapable of fulfilling the role destiny has prepared for me.
Shall I show you the same mercy you showed the rest of the circle, then? You blithely murdered them to restore their pillars, yet your hand faltered when it came to the final sacrifice. What makes you exempt, Kain? You're merely the last man standing. Why condemn me for simply carrying out what you hadn't the courage to do yourself?
Let's drop the moral posturing, shall we? We both know there's no altruism in this pursuit. Your reckless indignation led you here. I counted on it. There's no shame in it, Raziel. Revenge is motivation enough. At least it's honest. Hate me, but do it honestly. 30 years hence, I am presented with a dilemma. Let's call it a two-sided coin. If the coin falls one way, I sacrifice myself and thus restore the pillars. But as the last surviving vampire in Nosgoth, this would mean the annihilation of our species. Mobius made sure of that. If the coin lands on the reverse, I refuse the sacrifice and thus doom the pillars to an eternity of collapse. Either way, the game is rigged.
We agree, then, that the pillars are crucial and must be restored.
Yes, Raziel. And that's why we've come full circle to this place.
So after all this, you make my case for me. To end this stalemate, you must die so that new Guardians can be born.
Pillars don't belong to them, Raziel. They belong to us.
Your arrogance is boundless, Kain.
There's a third option. A monumental secret hidden in your very presence here. But it's a secret you have to discover for yourself. Unearth your destiny, Raziel. It's all laid out for you here.
You said it yourself, Kain. There are only two sides to your coin.
Apparently so. But suppose you throw a coin enough times. Suppose one day it lands on its edge.
That coin flip analogy is historic in gaming, and for anyone not fully following, the crux is time isn't a line but a cycle of repeating events with various timelines existing, being formed whenever history changes. Kain is determined to change reality to such a degree that he can both prevent the corruption of the pillars and not have to sacrifice himself to do so. But doing that needs a major paradox, and he is counting on Raziel and the free will that we seem to have to do something which breaks the cycle of inevitable repeating events. It seems Kain has relived these moments through so many timelines before and has realized that only the choices Raziel makes seem to lead to big enough paradoxes. We are the coin landing on its edge potential. Kain teleports away, and I love these symbols here hinting at, hey, switch to spectral, and down this path we find a locked cave.
From the look of it, this door had been sealed for centuries. I began to realize it was no mere coincidence that I found myself standing here, beneath this winged figure with blue skin and cloven hands so like my own, and bearing this unique key.
Turns out the Soul Reaver blade is a key to this door, and oh, remember in 1 when we got the ability to shoot projectiles out of the blade whenever you wanted, and this was great because you could shoot enemies onto spikes or into sunlight or into water? Well, you can't do that anymore. You can only shoot while standing in zoomed in look around mode, and the projectile attack can never kill anything, so it's not really that good. It also never gets used to move blocks from a distance, which was one of the best uses it had. And remember the Dumar boss fight that gave you the constriction ability where you could run around switches to turn them on or run around enemies to trace a line of energy and stun them? That's just gone. You can't do that anymore at all. No explanation for why you can't do it, you just can't. Progress through the deep caverns, find some paintings of the ancients and the Hilden fighting, follow the yellow glowing crystals, and eventually we reach the underground Temple of the Pillars, and under the water here we hear a familiar voice.
Do not be deceived.
My ancient benefactor. And I dared to hope we had parted ways forever. Your silence was refreshing, but it lasted. No doubt you have a conveniently inexpressible reason for your presence here?
Do not be insolent, Raziel. I am eternally present here and everywhere, now and always. I am the still center of the turning wheel, the hub of this world's destiny.
but perhaps not so omnipotent as you'd have me believe. Your hold on me appears to be tenuous. I no longer seem to need you. Yet I'm guessing you still need me.
This impudence is unworthy of you, Raziel. Do not forget that you have a task to fulfill here. I restored you to yourself, Raziel. It was Kain who destroyed you. The very enemy you've just let slip through your grasp. Do not fail me, my servant.
I serve no one. Not you, not Kain, and not your lackey Mobius.
Mobius is my good servant. I have many.
And if I tell Mobius that he's worshipping a giant squid, do you think his faith will falter?
I love the fact that Raziel calls the Elder God a giant squid. Also, at the end of Soul Reaver 1, the Elder God specifically says if we go through that portal, we will be beyond his reach. Which, if he knew was a time portal, and he's the heart of Nosgoth, he surely knew was incorrect. Squid God also wants us to kill Kain. I love how you can swim up to him and really get a sense of scale. And further through this cave system, another massive open room with an underwater statue, but notice how the statue has a climbable texture. That's probably a hint we'll return here sometime in the future when it's not full of water. Swim on and you'll emerge at the swamp. The awkward, slow, annoying swamp.
I surfaced into a very different landscape. The daylight barely penetrated the dense canopy of this forest. Here I discovered an ancient ruin, unmistakably one of Mobius's time-streaming chambers, but long ago sealed and abandoned to the encroaching swamp.
If you only had to trudge through this place once, I could forgive it, but you will be coming back here 5 times. While here, we also notice we're being watched.
So, my lurking observer was exposed. The creature vanished when he realized he was discovered, but I caught a glimpse of him, and his features were distinctive enough. This was the vampire Vorador, the monstrous assassin depicted in the stronghold. Strange that a creature brazen enough to assault the circle single-handedly would avoid confronting me. Very well. If Vorador would not come to me, I would go to him.
So Vorador is still alive. Excellent. He may have some answers for us, because so far the Elder God wants us to kill Kain, Mobius wants us to kill Kain, but Kain doesn't seem too keen on killing us. We fight through and reach the balcony where Vorador was, but he is gone. However, we can head into the first of 4 elemental forges. This enemy has a brightly coloured shield. This is actually a key. Kill the enemy, take the shield, stick it in the door. This mechanic has promise. However, every single key you ever need is always carried by an enemy literally right next to the door it's needed for. This design tells me that yes, they have put something new into the game, but they have not sat back and said, right, how can we make this as interesting as it could possibly be? And that is my ultimate issue with Soul Reaver 2. The story and the writing and the acting are world class, but the mechanics and the gameplay feel extremely surface level. Welcome to the Elemental Forge of Darkness, because apparently darkness is an element. Each forge is basically a large self-contained puzzle which rewards us with a new imbue for the Reaver blade. They have a slight visual connection to their specific element and a few unique puzzles. We have a few more cutscenes with the winged ancient race fighting the Hilden, and like Soul Reaver 1, we get some unique spears per area. But as we always have the Reaver and you don't need a weapon to win a fight, taking spears is now essentially pointless. This forge has us spin some giant reflecting mirrors and move some blocks and pillars along clearly marked floors. Unlike 1, you can't move blocks within a room, you can just drag them along the path. We then get told to shoot projectiles at puzzle targets. We don't get to see a cutscene with this happening or an enemy doing it and then maybe a hint that we can do it too. We don't get to see a projectile mechanic happen and then realize that we can also engage with it, we just get told to do it. Which is weak design, because not only are you just telling a player what to do with no lead-in, but later in the game we do see a cutscene which introduces us to a mechanic, so they clearly know that you can do that. There's also little consistency because very few things ever need to be shot and they're all highlighted, and later you need a power-up to break things things, despite that being something you could already do in Soul Reaver 1. Shooting isn't super accurate either. The central aiming circle isn't actually where the projectile goes. You need to aim slightly above where you want it to be. Grab another golden mirror shield, place it into a pedestal, reflect some light, and light up this model of the moon. Plunge the Reaver into the forge and power up the darkness energy, which activates all the metal basins we've been seeing around the game.
As I neared the altar, I suddenly felt the Reaver quickening of its own volition. Just as in William's chapel, the balance of power tangibly shifted. Voracious and willful, the Soul Reaver was now in control, and I, merely its helpless puppet. The Reaver plunged itself into that mysterious altar, and devouring the energy that emanated from within, drained this place of its power.
The Reaver can only ever be imbued with one element at a time, and certain locked doors need certain imbues active to be unlocked, effectively turning the Reaver into 4 different coloured keys with a very minor power for each one. Raziel even mentions he has seen a door with the darkness lock back by the stronghold, so we leave this place to head back and finally meet Vorador.
You're a ragged excuse for a savior.
Vorador.
I see my reputation precedes me.
It does.
All good, I hope? I've been watching you since you emerged from that accursed stronghold. Strange that your arrival coincides with the corruption of the Pillars. But I'm wondering, are you the catalyst of these events? Or the answer to them?
I don't know what you mean.
I will speak plainly, then. I distrust your origins, stranger. Seeing you crawl from the putrid depths of Mobius's keep makes me question your purpose here. And what should I make of your appearance? Not human, clearly, and more demon than vampire. And the Pillars. It is no mere coincidence that your arrival in that clearing heralded the Pillars' decay. And so I ask you plainly, are you the instrument of the Pillars' destruction or their salvation? The path you have been treading is open to only one being. You don't know what you are, do you?
I have been many things. If you find me ignorant, enlighten me.
What's the point? This world is beyond redemption.
What am I to make of these secrets I've uncovered, then? The depictions of the winged race, the Pillars, and the Reaver.
Fairy tales, boy. The delusions of an ancient culture clinging to hope long after the world had discarded them. Their bloodline trickled away, until only one of the ancients remained, sustained solely by obligation and his unfaltering faith in the old prophecies. But you see, even if you are who you appear to be, it no longer matters. You're simply too late. Janos Audron, the Reaver Guardian, the last of the ancients, and my maker, was murdered by the Seraphan nearly 5 centuries ago. He alone would have the answers you seek, but his secrets died with him. I don't know how you've come even this far without his guidance, or without the Reaver, stolen these 500 years ago by the Seraphan. I'm afraid, my friend, that you and all of us are out of luck.
I had no less reason to trust Vorador than anyone else I had met. In fact, the ancient vampire was the most forthright being I had encountered thus far. If Janos Audron was the key to all this, then I would find him, and Mobius's time-streaming device would provide me passage.
So we need to go and chat to Janos Audron, but they died 5 centuries ago, so for now, head back to the stronghold, unlock the darkness door on the edge of the lake. How do we get back? Just run, all the way back. Back through the swamp, back through the cave, swim back past the monument, and then back past the Elder God, who of course has some input.
Ah, my wayward child returns.
Having unearthed more than you'd like, I suspect. What am I to make of these ruins that litter the land, and these images here in this chamber?
Merely the deceits of a failed civilization. You are being misled, Raziel. This ancient race hoped to manipulate the future with these scrawled misdirections. You must tread carefully. There are dark forces at work in this world, bent on subverting your true destiny.
I have no doubt of that. The question is, am I in their presence right now?
Leave the ancient cavern, run back through the outside nature corridor, jump back into the lake and unlock the darkness door. Just inside you can also plunge the Reaver into this specific bit on the floor to create a bridge of shadow, which is actually very cool. It's a shame you only have to do this about 3 times in the game. Welcome to the Light Forge. Same overall idea as all the other forges. Solve a giant puzzle and get a new elemental imbue. We need to find a key to fix this giant praying crystal statue, but the key is guarded by this giant eye, and in a lovely design touch, we see the eye zap an enemy, teaching the player, hey, don't go near this. So they clearly understand you can introduce a mechanic and its consequence in a cutscene. So how do you pass the eye? Well, you need to shoot it with a darkness-imbued projectile to blind it, but to find a darkness font, we're going to need to solve the puzzle of the entire forge. This means ignoring more combat, moving more reflection blocks, another golden shield combat puzzle, switching between both realms a few times, ignoring all of the encounters because they waste time, accessing the font, imbue, and then shoot the eye. Grab the key and bring it back to the statue. I've made that sound quick, but it takes about half an hour. This unlocks the light elemental imbue. While imbued with light energy, your projectiles will activate crystals like the ones above doors. You need to shoot this one to get out, which is a nice way to explain the mechanic and then have the player use it. With this, we can head back outside, swim back to the stronghold and shoot the crystal above the main doors and head back inside. The point of returning is to use the time-streaming chamber to travel to the past and chat to Janos Ordron, figure out what Kain is trying to accomplish, but while here, we once again bump into Kain himself, and another potential paradox.
Here, Raziel. Everything is decided here. You cannot comprehend the magnitude, the rapture and the tragedy of this moment. And yet you must, if Nosgoth is to be dragged from the wreckage of its damnation.
I understand only this, Kain. That you and Mobius have impelled me to this moment simply means I can trust neither of you. I don't know who's pulling the strings, but it no longer matters, because I'm cutting them. I set my own course from here.
If it were only that simple.
Your fatalism is tiresome, Kain.
And profoundly ingrained, Raziel. You must understand. Our presence here doesn't alter history. You and I meet here because we are compelled to. We have always met here. History is irredeemable. Drop a stone into a rushing river. The current simply courses around it and flows on as if the obstruction were never there. You and I are pebbles, Raziel, and have even less hope of disrupting the time stream. The continuum of history is simply too strong, too resilient. Except, then how do we explain William here? The beloved boy king turned tyrant. In my youth, I witnessed William's rise to power and his transformation into the nemesis who laid waste to Nosgoth.
Keep your distance, Kain.
Years later, I stumble upon a chance to journey back in history, unaware that the entire affair has been carefully orchestrated by Mobius. In my wisdom, I seize this opportunity to murder the young king before he can ravage Nosgoth, and thereby provide the catalyst Mobius needs to ignite a genocidal war against our race.
I warn you, no further.
This one reckless act unravels the skein of history. The nemesis never becomes the nemesis. William dies a martyred saint. I, the vampire assassin, become the author of my own species' extinction, and Mobius profits from it all. I destroyed a tyrant only to create one far worse. But how can it be so? How, if history is immutable? The answer is here in this room, Raziel. Mobius propelled William and me together, but ensured first that we were both armed with the Soul Reaver. The Reaver is the key. Two incarnations of the blade meet in time and space. A paradox is created, a temporal distortion powerful enough to derail history.
Is this your sorcery?
Not mine, Raziel. Yours. You have nothing to fear from me, Raziel. You hold all the cards.
Then perhaps I should test your sincerity. If what you say is true, you should be terrified. I could kill you here and now.
And so you do, Raziel.
What's happening?
We're hurtling towards our destinies, Raziel. What you feel is the pull of history rushing to meet us. This is where history and destiny collide. If you truly believe in free will, Raziel, now is the time to prove it. Kill me now, and we both become pawns of history, dragged down the path of an artificial destiny. I was ordained to assume the role of Balance Guardian in Nosgoth, while you were destined to be its savior. But the map of my fate was redrawn by Mobius, and so in turn was yours.
This is madness!
Fight it, Raziel. This moment does not have to be an ending. It can become a prelude. I can't. You can, Raziel. Look inside and see that it is so. You have the power to reshape our inevitable futures. Poor William.
What is this?
History abhors a paradox, Raziel. Even now, the time stream strains to divert itself, finding its old course blocked by your refusal to destroy me. The future is reshuffling itself to accommodate your monumental decision. This is where we restore ourselves, Raziel, and reclaim our intended destinies. It may yet be possible for me to assume my role as Balance Guardian and return the pillars to their rightful inheritors.
To the vampires. And this is the destiny you have urged me to discover. I don't know what game you and Mobius are playing, Kain, but I refuse to be your pawn. Unlike you, I still revere whatever shred of humanity I've managed to preserve. You will not use me as the instrument of your messianic delusions.
Very well, Raziel. I'll not ask you to trust me. Your truths are for you to discover alone.
Humble words for one who presumes to teach me a lesson at every turn.
Then continue your journey and learn your own lessons, Raziel. Remember, Mobius led you here, but you walk away unfettered. A champion of free will and conqueror of false histories.
So in this timeline, Raziel was meant to kill Kain right here, but Kain risks it. He has faith in our ability to deny fate and to choose, and then by not killing him, we have created a paradox right now. This could be the catalyst needed to save Nosgoth, but again, history just reshuffles itself and we've effectively switched timelines, but because it wasn't a major enough rewrite, nothing really changes. In this slightly new timeline, we head to the time streaming chamber and bump into Mobius.
Ah, yes. I like that look on your face, Mobius. You really don't know what to do now, do you, old man? Here you are, caught without your damn staff. And I suspect things aren't progressing quite as you'd hoped. You're not used to the fly turning to confront you in your web, are you?
Kain's devious influence has poisoned your mind, Raziel. Now you see betrayal everywhere, even in your closest allies.
We were never allies, Mobius. Conspirators, perhaps. Briefly.
Why did you not kill Kain when you had the chance? He was at your mercy.
Precisely. I had a choice, and I chose mercy. And now I know your sordid little secret. The significance of that displacement I felt when the two Reavers came together. Strangely enough, I was enlightened by the devious Kain, not by you. In fact, I've learned much more than you counted on. I understand now how you've tried to manipulate all of history for your own personal gain. But now all your little schemes are whirling in ruin around you, aren't they? All because I chose to exert my will for once, rather than obey the demands of sorcerers and spirits and demons, all singing the same tiresome refrain, "Kill Kain." I'm setting my own path from here, Mobius. I intend to discover the truth behind all of this.
But you condemn us all with this impetuous act.
Hardly impetuous. It took all the will I could muster. Has my refusal to kill Kain reshuffled your carefully stacked deck of cards?
You really think that you're exercising your free will, Raziel? You're simply Kain's servant.
I do not serve Kain. I merely did not kill him.
Raziel, do not forget your purpose here. You are destined to be the savior of Nosgoth.
Oh, I'm sick of hearing that particular phrase. As for saving Nosgoth, so far I see precious little reason to bother. And I'll choose my own purpose from here on out, Time Streamer. Right now, I choose to manipulate you for a change. Go. In there.
What are you doing?
Come now, Mobius. You're a cunning serpent. You'll piece it together, I imagine. This era is of no further use to me. You will operate this device to provide me passage. I want to see the world in a simpler time, before the Sarafan began their crusade.
And what about Kain? You're leaving your core behind.
You kill him if it's so damned important.
You need only touch the two poles of the switch, and the device will transport you. But I urge you to reconsider.
You've lost your powers of persuasion, old man. Rot here and forget me.
So Raziel stupidly trusts Mobius to send him to the past, but we emerge and realise we seem to be quite far in the future instead. We wander around the Sarafan stronghold and then get attacked by these demonic-looking things. These are, effectively, demons from the same hell dimension that the ancients banished the Hilden to. Some of these demons might even be Hilden. It seems the more paradoxes we create, the more history has to shuffle itself around, and the weaker the veil between the hell dimension and the material world becomes. Now, I really like the design of the demons, of the Hilden, organic sci-fi, electrical bone and sinew. Later we see some poison sacks, horns and claws. They feel alien. They feel powerful. This one even reminds me of Summon's Skull from Yu-Gi-Oh! But this is where the comparison to Devil May Cry or God of War sits the strongest. Because as you progress through the stronghold, the Hilden create physical energy barriers that you can only break by defeating all the enemies in that area. Fight through and reach the main hall, and we see how this timeline played out. A statue shows Mobius took command of the vampire hunters and killed Vorador. We then go to leave and meet the spirit of Mobius.
Raziel.
What pathetic charade is this now, Mobius?
No charade, Raziel. Only the entreaties of this martyred spirit.
Your pleas mean nothing to me after all your deceit. You have propelled me into Nosgoth's future, Mobius, and left me stranded here.
I am truly sorry, Raziel, but it was necessary. Consider it the last valiant act of a doomed man. You have strayed from your purpose, and now behold the result. Gaze upon the wasteland you and Kain authored together.
I fail to see how I'm responsible.
You spared Kain, and by doing so, you have released a multitude of horrors upon this world. I can accept that Kain has murdered me, Raziel. As the Time Guardian, I foresaw that incident long before it occurred, and I take some small comfort in the fact that Kain remains the sole survivor of his vile breed. But you have single-handedly made my sacrifice meaningless.
Your argument is disingenuous, Time Streamer. I cannot see how killing or sparing Kain's future self would alter these events. This wasteland was created by Kain's original refusal at the Pillars, and amidst all these twists and turns, that event has never changed. You are cunning, Mobius, but I think you've gotten tangled in your own web.
As Kain clings to his precious seat of power, the Pillars sink into a mire of decay, dragging all of Nosgoth down with them.
I don't think this has anything to do with the Pillars, or Kain's failure to sacrifice himself. I think you're simply afraid, because you don't know what he's up to. He's a wild card, isn't he? And you don't want his influence in your game. Which is why you wanted me to eliminate him. Well, now that he survived, you have no idea what's coming, do you? Maybe, for the first time in your entire life, you're terrified that he may have truly found a third option out of the dilemma you orchestrated for him.
Kain's lies have addled your mind. Leave this place and trouble my spirit no more.
If you even are a spirit, you've forgotten. I have a way to tell for sure. If you're willing to risk it. I didn't think so. Either way, you lose.
Raziel threatening to switch to the spirit realm and consume the soul of Mobius is an incredibly badass moment. So we leave the stronghold, and the only route back is back under the water, back down the outside path, back across the bridge, and reach the Pillars again, this time haunted by the ghost of Ariel, the previous Balance Guardian. So we have a chat.
As I approached, I discerned the spirit of Ariel, bound here now for more than a century.
Forever am I bound, hope abandoned, my spirit tethered to this place. I alone was spared the descent into madness, and Kain alone was spared the pain of death. Consider us now, both of us less than we once were. I, pure but insubstantial, and Kain, terribly real, but corrupted.
Your imprisonment here has deranged you, spirit. You fixate on Kain because you believe he is the tether that binds you here. But we both know he is not the author of your agony. The Pillars were subverted by dark forces, invited by the Guardians themselves. The more I learn of your circle, the more I see a tangle of nested manipulations.
Kain handed them their victory. They sought to topple the Pillars, and he was their willing instrument.
Or was he their unwilling pawn? Would it blunt your wrath to know that Kain's dilemma was calculated to bring the Pillars down, regardless of the choice he made? And that the devastation would have been even greater had he chosen the path you would prescribe for him?
He must die for the Pillars to be restored. There is no other way.
Then consider this more ominous possibility. What if Kain's death does not restore the Pillars? Consider that it may simply be too late, that this world may be beyond redemption, and that you may be bound here eternally.
Why do you torment me?
I'm merely looking for answers, Ariel. Very well. I'll leave you in peace. But know this about you and this purgatory from which you long to escape. You're merely at the threshold.
I love how she attempts to run away in the cutscene and Raziel switches to Spectral, using the same physical motion as you use in-game. This is a great way to combine game mechanics and cutscene to feel coherent instead of divided. Basically, the overworld is a line. There's only one route to ever go, back down the path, back into the cave and meet the Elder God again, who seems to be way bigger in this age.
Raziel, the failed assassin. You had Kain at your mercy, but lacked the courage to fulfill the act. And now you see the wasteland wrought by the tyrant's hand, by his selfish decision to preserve his own life, even when it meant sacrificing the whole world. This is the fate of Nosgoth, as long as Kain remains alive.
An ironic condemnation, given this guilty scene. One would think you'd torn down the pillars single-handedly. What are you trying to obliterate as you drag your loathsome body through this chamber? And why, as Nosgoth descends into madness and misery, do you appear to thrive? Things in this world, I am learning, are rarely what they seem. You, apparently, are no exception.
I am the engine of life, the source of Nosgoth's very existence. I am the hub of the wheel, the origin of all life, the devourer of death.
Or maybe you're just hungry. Could it be as simple as that? Wouldn't that be poetic irony? The great adversary of the vampires turns out to be the biggest parasite of them all.
Do not test my patience, Raziel. I made you, and I will unmake you if I become so inclined.
As your agent, I am beyond death.
There are fates worse than death, Raziel.
Oh, I see you now as you truly are. A cancer, a spooling parasite burrowed deep in the heart of this world.
Go now. Play out your pitiful rebellion and take your place among the destroyed, the used, and the damned. But know this, you are mine for eternity. You have always been, and will always be, my soul Reaver.
We dive into the water again, see how big our old squid friend has become, and swim through the same cave system again, but now there is slightly less water, meaning we have to actually ascend by climbing. There's even a darkness font, but approaching it spawns a ghost guardian with a glowing orb inside them. You must defeat the guardian of any font to activate that font, and you defeat them by hitting them 3 times, so it's not really a challenge. A font guardian is also right next to the font they activate, never anything more complicated, and then we use the Dark Reaver to create another shadow bridge and reach the swamp. Again.
The passage of time had indeed cleared my way forward, enabling me to explore the northern mountains of Nosgoth. I was anxious to discover if some evidence of Janos Audron's existence might still remain.
It seems the future has made the northern mountain wall climbable, so we climb on up and walk through another long corridor section to reach the small village of Ushtenheim.
Here I discovered the quaint hamlet of Ushtenheim, now long abandoned and collapsing into ruin. Legend claimed that Janos Audron terrorized its villagers until the Sarafan hunters ferreted him out and destroyed him. If there was any truth to the old tales, the lair of the infamous vampire could not be far away.
The little hamlet is again very linear, basically in and out, no secrets, no hidden items, no reason to really explore, and on the other side we spend a few more minutes going down a windy mountain path to reach an overlook, the home of Janos Audron, the mountain retreat, and again we bump into Kain.
Undoubtedly, I stood before the mountain refuge of the legendary Janos Audron, but the entire sanctuary lay in ruin, collapsed under the force of some ancient cataclysm. As I suspected, the time streamer's deception ensured that I was centuries too late to unearth anything of consequence here. Oh no. Every time you turn up, something monumental and terrible happens. I don't think I have the stomach for it.
No drama this time, Raziel.
You are persistent, crossing time like this to follow me. Still waiting for that coin of yours to land on its edge.
I'm biding my time. Janos is indeed the key to your destiny. But you'll need to find your own way back into Nosgoth's past. Make no mistake, though, Raziel. You and I are now in great danger. We are irritants here. Malevolent forces are being marshaled to eliminate us.
You talk as though we're allies.
Regardless of your sentiments, Raziel, in their eyes, we are.
Well, they're certainly trying to eliminate you, Kain. There can be no doubt of that. I am assaulted relentlessly with demands for your demise. Whatever it is that you're plotting, they're scared to death of you. As for me, I suspect they made a grave error when they allowed my unique resurrection. I don't think they know how to destroy me.
You mustn't underestimate them, Raziel.
And who exactly is this diabolical they to which we keep referring? If there's some grand conspiracy going on, the right hand doesn't appear to know what the left is doing. Even Mobius seems to be caught out at every turn.
Mobius is a puppet, Raziel. Haven't you realized that yet? That's the sweetest irony in all of this. Nosgoth's great manipulator is their plaything. But the ones pulling the strings haven't shown their faces yet.
So even Kain is aware that something greater than him and greater than Mobius, maybe even greater than the Elder God, is happening. He just doesn't know what. I also love the slowly forming respect between Raziel and Kain, as Raziel realizes that things are more complicated than he first thought. Into the mountain retreat we go. Shame there's no hidden faction system like in 1, where you can not attack certain factions and have them support you. In fact, the lack of hidden or optional content in Soul Reaver 2 is one of the worst things. Soul Reaver 2 is one of the experiences I would describe as an incredible 2-hour story interrupted by 4 hours of mediocre gameplay. Another all-watching eye, we blind with the Dark Reaver, and then we enter the Wind Forge, and Raziel questions his purpose even more.
The scenes I discovered here were unambiguous. This race of winged beings, the architects of the pillars and the creators of the Reaver, were Nosgoth's first vampires. Their bloodthirst appeared to be a curse, inflicted upon them by their vanquished enemies. These images confirmed the truths that Kain had divulged to me, but I had been too incredulous to accept. I struggled in vain to see how the pieces fit together, how Kain intended to escape the dilemma of his destiny, and what role he had plotted for me, and why Mobius and the dark powers with which he seemed to be allied were so desperate to see Kain dead, and so intent on me being the instrument of his execution.
To enter this shrine, you must shoot this plinth with a light Reaver projectile. This is the only time you need to do this. Essentially, it's just checking that the player has that before it lets them into this forge. Welcome to the Air Forge and a giant snake pillar watched over by 2 elemental heads. We jump down into the pillar pit and find 3 corridors marked with 3 coloured gems: green, blue and red. Each path leads to a giant skull watching over a tied-up sacrifice. You may notice, however, the giant skulls are actually staring at black cubes. This is a graphical issue with the modern graphic rework. You can switch graphics in-game freely, same as Tomb Raider. Old style shows what you're meant to see, a tied body with an arched back, but the modern style shows you the cube. You can actually go into freecam mode, fly in and discover it is indeed a rendered body. Even in high graphics, it's not being censored, it's just a bug. But until it's fixed, respect the cube. So what's the puzzle of this entire forge? Well, the forge has 3 wings that separate from it. Each wing has a puzzle rewarding a coloured magical heart. Get the heart from each wing, bring it back to the corresponding skull. Each wing starts with a fight against a shield key enemy. Genuinely, it's 3 identical fights. Then the first puzzle has you open and close these 2 mouth-like windpipes, which you use to enhance your glide and move from side to side. I love this mechanic and think it's a shame that it's only used in this forge. You need to change between the light and the dark Reavers to blind an eye, create a bridge, and then shoot a gem. I do, however, really like how when you aim the light Reaver, it acts like a flashlight. This was one of the better puzzles: stacking, climbing, gliding, realm switching, imbue changing, and projectile shooting. We get the heart and put it on the cube of its specific colour and watch the skull become active and begin to emit a stream of air. Just don't put the heart on the wrong colour, and if you do, you'll lose the heart, and if you're playing on Steam, get an achievement, as I discovered. The second puzzle starts with the shield battle again, and hang on, is that shield the wrong way round? Look at the recess in the wall and the flourishes on the edge of the shield. That shouldn't fit. This puzzle has you trying to glide against a current, but you can't, so you climb around the side, activate a bridge, get the heart, bring it to its cube, activate the second skull, and the third puzzle, the only block puzzle in the game, has you activate a bridge, run along it, pull a block from the wall, then push that block about 3 times to the switch literally right next to it, so you can stand on it. How disappointing. Bring the final heart back, activate the third and final skull wind thing, then use the combined updraft to glide to the very top of the snake pillar. Shoot both mouths with darkness and light energy, and then get the third elemental power of air, flashing light warning again.
As the Reaver drained the forge of its vital energy, the tempest receded. I recovered myself and paused to admire my newly forged weapon, now imbued with the elemental power of air. Thus armed, I hoped that I now finally possessed the means to escape this wasted land.
The power of air brings us 2 new abilities. We can now activate these 4 circle patterns on the floor to create updrafts we can glide on, and we can use our projectiles to shoot and break crumbling walls. Now you'd think the ability to create updrafts and glides would give us access to secret areas, but nope, you only ever use these to progress down the critical path. With these skills, Raziel remembers there was a time-streaming chamber in the swamp, and we can now shoot our way into it, so it's time to backtrack. Again, really missing those warp gates right about now. Oh, there's also a day and night cycle, so if it seems really dark outside, that's why. It doesn't bring any gameplay improvements or changes, it just makes things harder to see. Back through the mountain pass, back through the small village of Ushtenheim, back to the swamp, trudge through it again, shoot our way into the time chamber, head on in, and find another time travel room, blindly leaping into time.
I had no choice but to act purely on blind faith. There was no way to tell what era this device was tuned to, and I had neither the knowledge nor the means to set the machine myself. I hesitated only briefly. Then, throwing the switch, I hurled myself into oblivion and relinquished my will to the hand of fate. Beyond all hope and against all probability, it seemed that the device had unerringly delivered me to the era I sought. For these were Sarafan banners, and these vampires apparently the victims of their crusade. The coincidence seemed too convenient to naively ascribe to fate. But whether my opportune arrival had been orchestrated by Mobius or some other influence, I didn't know. If Janos Audron still lived, I would find him.
We emerge from the chamber, and thankfully, we seem to have arrived in the past while the Sarafan crusade is still going on and Janos Audron is possibly still alive. So we backtrack through the swamp again, activate the updraft and glide into the mountains, back through the mountain pass, meet the actual Sarafan vampire hunters. Combat hasn't changed, so don't bother engaging with it. Run past them, run through Ushtenheim again and reach the overlook of Janos Audron's retreat again. How do we get in when we can't fly? Well, simple. Dive into the water, see that massive logo in front of you, switch to Spectral, open the door, and in we go. The spectral and physical realms don't seem to have been used as much in this game as in the first, and when they have been used, it's mostly been about switching to effectively open a door instead of give yourself access to new platforms to stand on. Remember how the first game made a big deal of how the spectral realm has no weight, water has no heft, and moving platforms can't move, and then used all of those to solve puzzles like standing on a pedestal in the physical to raise up the other side, then switching to spectral and using it as a step that can't fall down, or pulling a switch to open a timed door and switching to spectral so you can beat the timer. Soul Reaver 2 doesn't do any of that. Inside the Tower of Janos, we take a chalice, fill it with blood from a cauldron, and empty it into another, which creates a blood staircase, and up we go. Love this reflection bit, beautiful use of graphics, and now the final puzzle starts, the Tower of Janos Audron.
The mountain's interior was hollow, I discovered, and graced with soaring architecture unique to its creators. As with the outer facade, these balconies and galleries could only be reached by those gifted with flight. With only my ruined wings to carry me, this towering labyrinth seemed impassable, while the object of my quest lay just beyond my grasp. For here, suspended at the apex of the chamber, was the threshold that surely led to the great vampire himself.
There's actually an achievement for beating this in less than 15 minutes. This is the game's best vertical puzzle. It doesn't use the spirit realm at all, which is a shame because just not engaging with that mechanic is sad, and you need to ascend the tower, taking chalices of blood from floor to floor, but when you have a chalice, you cannot jump and glide, meaning you must create the staircases in the correct order. You need to open doors by fighting enemies and using the shield locks, shooting eye guardians with darkness projectiles, and then my favourite use of the light Reaver, shooting a projectile through 2 crystals lined up in the correct order. One of them later is even swinging, which is lovely. This is literally the only time this is used. And then there's a bit where you shoot a target with an air Reaver and it explodes. You unlock vortex pads as you go to ascend and act as shortcuts back to the floor you're on. This is a decent puzzle, and it's a real shame that the mechanics used here are only used here and not retroactively added to earlier parts of the game to encourage exploring. Soul Reaver 2 feels so rushed. Eventually we reach the top and confront Janos Audron himself.
Janos Audron? It is heartening after all these years to hear my name spoken without contempt. Raziel? My child, what have they done to you? I have been dragged through hell and back. All it seems to reach this moment. But I don't yet know why. The pillars choose their guardians from birth, Raziel. And vampires are no longer born. This is the crux of our dilemma. And this is the terrible irony. With their vampire purge, the members of the Circle have assaulted the very architects of the pillars they are sworn to protect. They have embarked on a treacherous path. With every vampire they kill, the humans are slitting their own throats.
So, it's all true then, what Kain and Vorador have told me. I really am some kind of unholy vampire messiah.
Unholy? No. Messiah, perhaps.
I don't like that word. It smells of martyrdom.
Raziel, your role in this world's destiny is more crucial and more benevolent than you've allowed yourself to believe. Your journey will not be easy. Dark powers are allied against you. But I think you already know this. You appear to have been cruelly tested. The binding must be secured, Raziel. The pillars are the lock.
And the Reaver is the key.
Yes.
The Reaver is here. Why do I feel nothing?
The most formidable weapon ever forged by our swordsmiths. They infused the blade with vampiric energy, empowering the Reaver to drain our enemies of their precious lifeblood.
As Janos presented the blade, an inexplicable sense of dread crept over me, more palpable than anything I'd felt before. I was at once horribly repelled by the sword, and yet irresistibly compelled to touch it, to take it up. Please, take it away from me.
I fear you have been followed. You must save yourself, Raziel.
Janos! No! My surroundings whirled sickeningly, and I found myself transported safely away from the ambush to an adjacent chamber. Janos had delivered me from the Sarafan, selflessly forfeiting his own safety to preserve my life. And now I feared that my newfound mentor would be slaughtered by the very crusaders I had so recently revered. The irony pierced me, and with dawning horror, I realized that I had been duped by Mobius from the beginning. For the Sarafan had simply followed the path I gullibly blazed through this sanctuary, and had arrived bearing Mobius's staff. Thus armed, they had Janos at their mercy. Through the door, I could hear them battling, less than a dozen paces away. But it may as well have been 1,000 miles, for this barrier was sealed by elemental forces I did not possess. It seemed Janos had conveyed me into the heart of the fire shrine. I thought perhaps if I could galvanize the forge and imbue the Reaver in time, I might have a slim chance of saving Janos from his grisly fate.
Seems we've been followed by the Sarafan warrior priests, but thankfully Janos threw us to the fire forge. That's convenient. This is the smallest forge in the game and really feels like they just tacked it on. It's a big room where you take a flaming torch from one side to the other, then fill the room with blood by shooting a giant crystal, swimming through that, gliding from one side to another, again shooting the crystal, again activating all of the updrafts, light the forge, plunge the Reaver in, activate the fire forge, and gain the final element. The element of fire.
I plunged the Reaver into that furnace and forged the blade with elemental fire. With the Reaver thus imbued, I was now armed to unlock the elemental barrier and rescue Janos from his executioners.
Go rescue Janos, unlock the door, confront the Sarafan, but... ooh, revelations.
Hold him!
Look at his black heart! How it still beats! The fiend intends to bury us alive! Raziel, we must get out of here!
Remember the sword!
Janos Audron in this timeline was killed by the Sarafan Raziel. The Heart of Darkness relic was taken, and that explains how the Heart of Janos became a vampiric relic given to Kain in the Blood Omen game. Yay for time travel! So we now have to return to the Sarafan headquarters, reclaim the Heart of Janos Audron from our human self, and then return it to Janos to bring them back to life. This means heading all the way back to the start of the game, and as we go, more demons spawn in and mock us, thinking, how could we possibly change fate? This has all happened before, and will all happen again.
We've been expecting you, little Raziel.
So, these demonic pests were not merely the product of Nosgoth's corrupted future, for here they were, hurtling back over 5 centuries to pursue me. These creatures, I suspected, were minions of the unseen forces that had hoped to control me. This was the tangible expression of their displeasure. These demons were unleashed as the penalty for my disobedience.
We get mocked in the hamlet.
There he is, the savior of Nosgoth.
And in the swamp.
You shall not pass.
And then we travel all the way through the cave system again, climbing the statue as the water is now at its lowest level, and finally meet the Elder God again, but this time they are much smaller.
You have failed me, Raziel.
I wonder, Old One, did you truly resurrect me, or were you simply there when I awakened from my torment in the abyss? I suspect you found me merely convenient, dropped in your lair by Kain, indestructible for some reason, a durable and gullible tool for you to manipulate. This one thing I readily admit. I have been used by others time and again, but always I seem to stray from their path. What is it about me, demon, that makes me such an unreliable instrument? Why do I survive one trial after another, on and on, in an endless succession of humiliating deaths and resurrections? It seems there is much more to my destiny and my history than I know. Perhaps more than you know as well.
We leave the cave, trek through the snow, past the pillars again, and more demon mockery.
He thinks he can change his destiny. What a fool.
We reach the Sarafan stronghold, but with the snow it's frozen over, so we use the Fire Reaver to melt a section of ice around the main door, the only time you ever do this, then use the Light Reaver to shoot the crystal and get back in. We fight our way inside and reach the Reaver blade itself, just kind of sitting there.
Suddenly and inexplicably, I discovered the Reaver suspiciously laid across my path. Again, I sensed nothing of that temporal distortion, the peculiar sense of displacement I had felt when I encountered the Reaver in William's chapel. Cornered here with the blade, I suffered the same nameless dread that I had experienced when Janos first presented the Reaver to me. I felt at once repelled by the blade, and yet overwhelmingly compelled to seize it.
So, Raziel, here we are, finally. You have no choice but to confront me now, and I am not so foolish as I've let you believe. We have business to conclude.
You knew I would lead the Sarafan to Janos, you vile bastard. You've been orchestrating my every move. My destiny is an amusement to you.
It was fun while it lasted. I think not, Raziel. Malik, do not let this creature leave. He poses a danger to the Circle. Poor, deluded Raziel. Did you somehow imagine you had the guile to change history on me? I'm the Time Streamer. I knew your every intention before you did, you imbecile.
I admit that I've underestimated you to this point, Mobius. But it's a mistake I won't repeat.
Wrong again, Raziel. Now, Malik, bolt the door.
Using his staff to disable my Wraithblade, Mobius effectively disarmed me, leaving me with only one choice of weapon. And yet I confess, it was not the lack of options, but blind rage that made me take up the Reaver. In my fury, it felt as though my hand had acted of its own will. And now, that same hand clutched the hilt with unyielding strength, and I felt a constrained tingling, a remote but palpable sense of longing, as the disabled Wraithblade tried vainly to embrace its physical twin.
Has all this, across multiple timelines, been orchestrated by Mobius? With Mobius's magical anti-vampire orb dissolving our actual Soul Reaver blade, Raziel takes up the physical Reaver, and now the game gets, honestly, super boring. It's not like it was amazing before, but having the physical Reaver changes two things. First, you now have a new combo of moves: light attacks, heavy attacks, running, ducking, jumping, and you cannot put the blade down, so you have to use these. But the biggest change is, while holding the Reaver, you cannot be harmed. So any combat is now completely pointless because you literally cannot die. I think this was designed as a final moment power fantasy where Raziel gets to see his full strength, but it just means any combat encounter has no drama to it. So we fight through the fortress and then we get attacked by some elite Sarafan. In fact, Sarafan we know.
Come to take your revenge, demon.
Back to hell with you!
I recognize these two as my former brethren, in life as Sarafan, and in unlife as Kain's vampire sons. Melchiah and Zephon, the weakest of Kain's brood. These bastards had no idea what future lay in store for them, how they would become the very thing they so despised.
This is the closest the game comes to a boss fight, killing our Sarafan brothers exactly the same as before, in a fight we literally cannot lose, starting with Melchiah and Zephon. So you run around in a circle and stab them. Compare this with their fights from the first game and you'll see how terrible this is. We kill those two and then take on two more, Dumar and Rahab. Exactly the same tactic. Then the brother which didn't appear in Soul Reaver 1.
Get back to the pit you crawled from, demon.
And here at last was my brother Turel, who along with Dumar would bear me into the abyss without questioning Kain's command. So dutiful and righteous, even as a vampire. I guess some habits die hard.
And finally, we confront ourself.
So, vampire, here we are. You've destroyed my brethren, and now you've come for me. You'll find I'm not such easy prey. I don't want to kill you, but I will if I must. Return the heart to me, and we can end this now. So, you've come to avenge that filthy parasite and reclaim his foul heart. You're a righteous fiend, aren't you? Apparently I am.
The final epic confrontation of the game, Raziel versus Raziel. Human Seraphan versus Immortal Wraith. But remember, you literally cannot die. This is the perfect visualization of how this game is an excellent story and a mediocre to, honestly in some parts, poor game. This is basically a cutscene that you're involved in. There's no challenge here, no mastery of anything, no understanding of any mechanics needed. Compare this with the final Oracle's cave and confrontation with Kain in the Chronoplast. A massive puzzle using every skill you possibly have, and then a confrontation with jumping, gliding, both realms, Kain struggling to activate the time chamber while we try to kill him. This is just one hell of a downgrade from the end of a game. But then we finally see Kain's plan play out. The coin land on its edge.
I renounce you. And so it ends. My history comes full circle. Sensing its twin, the Wraithblade uncoiled itself from me, and instead wound lovingly around its former self. I felt its grip loosen, and as the blade left me, its absence chilled me more than its presence ever had. A foreboding sense of emptiness and loss stole over me, and a terrible revelation gathered like a storm at the edge of my awareness. With all other foes exhausted, the conjoined blades turned themselves on me, and I realized, finally, why I had sensed nothing when Janos offered me the blade. The Reaver was never forged to be a soul-stealing weapon. The ravenous, soul-devouring entity trapped in the blade was, and always had been, me. This is why the blade was destroyed when Kain tried to strike me down. The Reaver could not devour its own soul. The paradox shattered the blade. So, this was my terrible destiny. To play out this purgatorial cycle for all eternity. I could not bear it. Despair overwhelmed me. You. Are you enjoying this game? Don't fight it, Raziel. Give into it. Was this your destiny for me all along? Trust me. I felt myself weakening, unable to hold on any longer. The Reaver was too strong. The compulsion to simply let go, too great. And then, a growing sense of vertigo and the familiar displacement. The paradoxical moment when my twin soul hovered both outside and inside the Reaver blade. This was the instant, the glimmer of temporal distortion Kain had been counting on all along. This was the edge of the coin, the minute flicker of probability upon which Kain had gambled everything.
Now you are free to reclaim your true destiny, Raziel.
Behind Kain's eyes, I could see new memories blooming and dying as history labored to reshuffle itself around this monumental obstruction. And I could see by the dawning horror on his face that perhaps we had strained history too far this time, that by trying to alter my fate, he may have introduced a fatal paradox.
My God. The Hilden. We walked right into their trap. Raziel, Janos must stay dead.
But Kain's warning was lost as I slipped into the spirit realm, too weak to maintain my physical form. And there, waiting for me as always, was the Reaver, the Wraithblade, my own soul, twinned and bound eternally to me. And I realized that I could never escape my terrible destiny. I had merely postponed it. History abhors a paradox.
For anyone unsure, the soul within the Soul Reaver blade was always Raziel because of the looping nature of time travel. It's why the blade breaks in Soul Reaver 1 when Kain tries to use it to kill Raziel. If it had killed Raziel, it would have had to absorb itself, which it cannot do, and it would have created a paradox which history doesn't like. But this gave Kain the plan for the most monumental paradox he could think of. There would be a moment when Raziel's soul is both not within him and not fully consumed by the Reaver. And by removing the sword at this exact time, where does Raziel's soul go? It wouldn't be in the Reaver, which means the events of Soul Reaver 1 couldn't then happen. This paradox would force time to substantially rewrite itself and might be the coin's edge he was hoping for, but more paradoxes means more possibility of the Hilden returning. Now, if Raziel's soul was absorbed into the blade, then that would allow for the events of Soul Reaver 1, and this game itself, because they both require that to have happened. But when Kain does this, in the cutscene, Raziel says you can see Kain experiencing the formation of new memories as a fully formed timeline effectively comes into existence from him doing this, and the events of Soul Reaver 1 and, in theory, this game could now not have happened. This alternate history, created by Raziel not being absorbed into the Reaver, is the timeline which Blood Omen 2 takes place in, which follows Kain's journey in a new alternate history after the crumbling of the pillars, where the Hilden have managed to return to Nosgoth and Kain has to hunt down and destroy the device, the Hilden superweapon. But that means we can consider both Soul Reaver 1 and Blood Omen 2 two alternate history lines which both get us to this point. And the direct sequel to Soul Reaver 2 is Legacy of Kain Defiance, which follows the continued adventures of Kain and Raziel in this timeline, where they chase down Mobius and confront the Elder God to find a way to actually fix Nosgoth without more paradoxes and the Hilden. But for now, this is Soul Reaver 2 completed, and we can answer the simple question, was it actually any good? As a story, yes, without a doubt. It expands the lore, reveals some history, enhances the narrative focus on the paradoxes of the land, casts Mobius, the Elder God, and Kain all as manipulative, wanting different things, casts doubt on who Raziel can trust, hints at the Hilden and the Ancients, and slowly reveals more. Narratively, it's very good. It's an expertly acted, epic myth. But as a video game, no. It misses the mark on what made the first Soul Reaver great. It reduced focus on puzzles, exploration, platforming, and physical and spectral realm manipulation. It removed all the collectibles, hidden optional areas, and magic system. It replaced the warp gates with a linear checkpoint system because there's no need to ever voluntarily return to a previous area. And yet you do return multiple times because the lack of fast travel system has you pacing the land back and forth about 6 times through very minor changes within each time period, which seems less explore Nosgoth through the ages and more we didn't have time to make a bigger game, so reuse the same area 5 times. And as the game released in the same year as Devil May Cry, it must be directly compared, which highlights the flaws with its combat system. Combat is weak. The forges are fine, but the bosses in the first game tied together Raziel's personal connection to his brethren, Kain's treatment of the land, their experience after the pillars crumbled, and the mechanical rewards that you steal from them reflect their evolutions through their existence. You also beat them through cunning, and the rewards you gain made Raziel himself more capable. And while yes, the elemental forges do imbue the Reaver with the power to make dark bridges, shoot light projectiles and open crystal locks or activate updrafts, it is essentially turning the Reaver into 4 different coloured keys. Raziel himself never gets any more skills, meaning I felt like a taxi service taking the Reaver where it needed to go, instead of exploring the world as Raziel with the Reaver as my symbiotic weapon. To repeat the opening of this video, I feel Soul Reaver 1 is a brilliant personal story of Raziel told through an atmospheric, tightly paced video game experience, while Soul Reaver 2 is a mediocre video game which you endure to experience the continuation of that story and the expansion of the world. The remaster collection is absolutely still worth getting, if mostly for the enjoyment and replayability of 1 and the one-time playthrough you will do of 2. If you're looking to understand what makes a well-designed game or an enjoyable experience, Soul Reaver 1 vs 2 is a great case study, mostly about how Soul Reaver 1 proves you can combine excellent writing, world-class voice acting and phenomenal mechanical pacing with optional hidden secrets into a top-tier game, even if the systems aren't that complex, and how 2 proves that improved graphics and more combat doesn't always make a better gameplay experience. Soul Reaver 2 is about paradoxes, and it itself is a paradox. It is absolutely worth playing through just to experience it, but the experience of playing it is not very good. The narrative is excellent, the gameplay is not. But narrative and gameplay are two sides of the same coin within this game, so to end the review, I will award Soul Reaver 2.
But suppose you throw a coin enough times. Suppose one day it lands on its edge.
Out of 10. Cheers for watching. Another massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep this channel alive. You can support from only £1 a month, and the team at Aspire for doing great work on the Soul Reaver remasters. Check out the video description for links to the Patreon, Twitch, Twitter and our Discord, and as always, remember,
History abhors a paradox.